Hey DudeFaxers, this is Grant coming to you from my home. This week I am actually not able to join the boys, Jeff, Ryan, and Josh on the podcast, but it's a good one. I'm coming to you from my home. For a lot of people, their home is where they live, but it is also their school. Today we'll be talking about homeschooling, some of the differences between regular school and homeschool. One of them is in most schools you don't have animals absolutely meleeing in the background. But I hope you enjoy this episode. As always, a group dynamic is really fun to be a part of, and especially after our individual dollops, which you haven't listened to those, I encourage you to go back and listen to part of my story, part of Jeff's story, part of Josh's story, and part of Ryan's story. But it's really fun to have the crew back together. Again, sorry for that absolute melee behind me, but welcome to this week's DudeFax about schooling and homeschooling. Guys, you're in for a good one.
Affirmative.
Welcome to the DudeFax podcast. Four guys united by their love for coffee and corny jokes come together to talk about Christian culture and the ups and downs of ministry. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy. The podcast starts now.
Affirmative.
Oh yeah, baby. Hello, dear friends and family and folks that accidentally stumbled upon this podcast.
Mostly
That
the
was
latter.
That was the Coco Rico rap, just in case you don't know. You should know. Welcome to our beautiful mess. This is the DudeFax podcast, and we're back. 3 out of 4 of us. Grant may or may not make an appearance on this. It depends on if he sends us a video later. But today, we're going to be talking about homeschooling and a little bit about public schooling as well. We're going to look at some of the misconceptions of it, talk about why you should homeschool or why you shouldn't homeschool, all those fun things. Even if you don't have kids, which I know a lot of you don't, it's okay. You should still listen. And we're talking to you, Tyler. David, I know that you have a stepson, so, we'll, tell you that it might be good for you to listen as well. But it doesn't matter. We're going to share pros and cons of each, talk about biblical support for both, and even what it means in our society as well. But before we get into all that, it's been a while. It's been a few weeks.
It has.
And, what have you guys been up to? Ryan, I see that you're playing the mandolin. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, so I bought a mandolin, and I've been trying to learn how to play it. I was doing that while I was supposed to be working this afternoon.
Good.
So that was fun.
What song, more than any song, do you want to learn on the mandolin?
So the main thing I want to learn how to play is the Battle of Evermore by Led Zeppelin. So... speaking of, in my dude doll, talked all about how I love Lord of the Rings. That goes right into it. So. Yeah,
you love Lord of the Rings, and so do I, unlike other people in this chat right now.
I don't know what you're talking about. I love Lord of the Rings.
well, we will get to that here in just a minute. But Josh, what you been up to? Besides being silent.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Man, I've just been living the dream here in Clarksville.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, did a big bike ride, 100 miles, which is I don't know, Jeff. I don't want to short sell what runners do. I know the marathon is crazy difficult, but I've heard that the 100 for a cyclist is like our marathon. But I really did not train. I think I would have had to train to run a marathon. So, but that was good. It was good to do that. It was fun. I went with a couple of friends, and it was one of those things that you don't get through unless you have people there, kind of pushing you to the end. been doing some work on the house as well. Trying to get everything settled in here. So, but that's about it. Nothing out of the ordinary. Oh, I got inked.
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
I did see that in a picture the other day on Facebook.
Is that for real?
I was like, is that real?
Yeah.
Nice.
You guys didn't watch y'all didn't watch my dollop. Maybe you
we did.
Yeah, I shared it at the end.
I watched the whole thing. Oh, no, I listened to it. Actually, I didn't watch it. Did you say something about it on the dollop?
I think I did at the very end because my whole conversation kind of tied in with that.
Yeah.
We'll go back and get our views up, man. And,
for real. No, I listened to it on my Monday run.
Of it.
Yeah.
So
You listened to the first 3/4 of it?
Yeah.
So you got tired at about 30 minutes?
I think what happened, I was listening to it while I was at work, and I got distracted by somebody asking me questions, and I never put my headphones back in.
I think I got distracted by the Lord of the Rings proposal thing, and maybe we should just dive right into it.
Let's do it.
I mean, on Josh's dollop, he's talking about Lord of the Rings, and he's talking about movies that he likes, and he complains that The Return of the King, although I will admit, is a little lengthy. All of them I thought were lengthy. But specifically The Return of the King, and talks about how he got bored of The Return of the King, but then proceeds to talk about how he likes rom-coms, to include The Proposal, which I believe has Betty White in it, right?
I don't want to confirm that because I don't want to admit that I've seen that movie.
Yeah. I do like Return of the King. That was misconstrued reaction. I do like Lord of the Ring.
Maybe that's why I missed the part about the tattoo. I was still steaming from that.
Yeah, it's possible. And I like Return of the King. I mean, they're all great. But the end of Return of the King, it's just so freaking long. Like I remember the first time I watched it. They go up the mountain, they throw the ring in, and and Gollum melts his face and all that, and then they go to the Shire, everything's good. But that thing went on for like another 45 minutes, and there were probably like 4 or 5 different times you think that movie's going to end, and it would have been fine. Now I didn't read the books, I don't know how it was supposed to end, but
it would have been a lot longer.
Well, that's Saruman, what you were the saying.
Shire. The scouring of the Shire is like another. It would have been like another hour.
Yeah, you thought it was long in the movie. Read the book.
I guess that makes it even worse because that's the shortened version.
Yeah, Peter Jackson was doing you a favor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't complain.
See, I'm the type of person though that when I want to watch The Lord of the Rings, I'm like extended cut all the way. So yes. I am prepared to dedicate the majority of my day to one movie.
Yeah. You watch the entire thing and then go back and rewatch it with the commentary.
Yeah, exactly. You know, have director comments.
Well, I do think we established in your dollop, Brian, that you are a nerd, and that's something that nerds do.
Yeah. Definitely something that nerds do.
Yeah. But I like Ryan Reynolds, and it may be more him because when I think about rom-coms, I like he's in them. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. Sandra Bullock's hilarious. He's hilarious. You put them together. It's just funny.
Actually, one of my favorite
go ahead.
rom-coms ever has him in it. It's I think I saw it on a plane, maybe when I went to China. It's called Definitely Maybe, I believe, or it's like he's like telling his daughter about like 3 different women who could possibly be her mother. But I always liked that movie for some reason. I think it's just because it has like Nirvana and like some good 90s shout outs in it. But
oh yeah, can't beat that. Sentimental.
Oh yeah.
Well, tell me what you would consider this. I don't know if this is nerdy or old manish. So one, I went to Universal. I got to my Universal Studios. If you look at it like this, it looks like it says Universal Stud.
That's what.
So I try to hold it like this.
Yeah, right.
But this morning, so I've been sitting on my back deck a lot, watching the birds, which I think is an old man thing to do. But I really enjoy them. But the squirrels have been getting on my feeder, and I feel like that's also something an old man would worry about. But this morning, I decided to take some action, and I got my son's red rifle, BB gun. And every time a squirrel got on the feeder, I popped off a shot on the squirrels. And didn't think it was a big deal because it's early in the morning after my run. I'm drinking coffee until I noticed that my neighbor was out on her deck watching me do this the whole time. And my wife proceeded to say, yeah, they probably think you're nuts. I'm like, yeah, they probably do. But I mean, is that like a normal thing to do? Or am I just like a cranky old man now?
The only other person I've known to do that was also a cranky old man. My papa was really big at shooting squirrels in the backyard.
Oh man, your papa.
Well,
Dad blasted squirrel.
Yeah, almost exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. When I picture that, I think of this. So it's clearly an old man thing.
That may have been on preview. I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything either.
Oh man. Okay, here it is. Maybe. Oh, stupid media board. It says it's going live, but it would have said
it'll play at a random time.
It will
later.
It will. So I've got it. I've got it ready to play. So at some point it will.
And then you guys will laugh eventually.
They probably know what soundbite it was going to be.
Hey,
at this point,
got you covered.
Not this point, this podcast, but I'm not hearing any.
You didn't hear the Kevs got you covered just now?
It was real faint in the background.
Oh,
probably because
is it loud to you?
The one you're trying to play is like
overpowering
over yours.
I don't know because before we got on, I kept hearing faint ones in the background.
It might be coming out of my earphones, maybe.
Oh yeah.
I'm not hearing anything here.
We're glad the listeners can join us in our technical difficulties.
I'm sure they're really enjoying this.
Welcome to this section of the podcast.
This is a finely produced machine, let me tell you. So yeah, I mean, things are interesting in our nation right now. Half of the Northeast is under like this apocalyptic smoke from Canada. So Canada decides to burn up its forest, and now all the smoke has come into the United States. It's like when your neighbor has a big bonfire and all the smoke goes into your yard. That's what Canada has done. So they're not being a very good neighbor. It's orange everywhere in New York. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures.
I have. It looks
just freaky.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't live there.
So this morning, I don't know if you guys saw it. This morning was like super foggy here. But whenever I got to run, I mean, it was just like a dense fog. And I'm out there, and my immediate thought, I said to Stephanie, I said, surely that's not the wildfire that's gotten down here, even though I'd heard that some of it made its way to Tennessee and Kentucky. But we both decided, no, I think that's just the fog. But it immediately made me think, are we inside the movie The Happening? We're having this kind of weird phenomenon going on. We're all going to start
talking about terrible movies,
walking off the cliff. Yeah.
I was going to say, is it just going to leave everyone disappointed in the end?
Yeah, exactly.
He Shyamalan Ding Dong. He peaked with Signs, and then it's all. Yeah. And I'll watch his movies. I mean, I've seen them all.
Somebody left
just because I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that return, like that. He always has such a great way to twist something, or at least he did that in The Village. Spoiler alert: they're not really back in the 1800s. Or whenever.
You ruined it for me. I was going to go watch that this week.
I had that queued up on Hulu.
But anyways, I've been disappointed, but I'll still go back and watch him. I don't know why.
He does have a few that are still decent now, but I agree. His earliest stuff was his best stuff by far. Yeah. He tried to do this whole world with Unbreakable and Split.
Yeah.
Which I liked Unbreakable a lot. And I actually enjoyed Split, but then they had Glass, and I don't know.
No, that one kind of missed. Split, I was going to say, is probably like his best one of his newer movies that I've
that seen. One was good.
Yeah. And then did you guys watch Old?
That was terrible.
No.
That was so bizarre.
It was.
I mean, you had like a pregnant kid. I mean, it was just it was like the weirdest thing. It was so bizarre. I don't know.
He clearly, wrote that when he had COVID and he was on drugs or something. Because that,
I don't know what was going on.
It's kind of like when you look at like Stephen King's all of his books that he's written, and like there's like points in time that he was clearly doing something that was altering his thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
He kind of looked like our president looked when he tripped and fell on stage at the Air Force graduation. Did you guys see that?
I did.
Yes.
It was bad. It was bad.
It's fine.
Poor guy. I do think that your comment, guys, if y'all haven't watched the other, all of the dollops, make sure you do. Jeff had a great comment in there. I don't want to tease it because we're going to talk about this in a minute, but you had a great correlation between LeBron James and the president, Joe Biden.
Yeah, they have a lot in common.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, sports has been crazy. We have the NBA finals going on. I'm disappointed my Celtics aren't in it. But the big news yesterday, I don't know if you guys are soccer fans, but Messi signing with Inter Miami. So like the greatest player in the world is now coming to the United States. In fact, Miami will eventually come and play Nashville. Messi's going to be in Nashville. That's like, a big stinking deal. It's like if you lived over in China and LeBron shows up. I mean, that's like a huge deal. So yeah.
Now all the people in Europe can't dump on the MLS that much anymore.
That's right. We got the best player in the world, maybe even the best ever. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm completely lost on that because I pay no attention to soccer. I
just know Messi is good.
Okay. I've heard
Messi.
I've heard the name Messi.
Okay. Yeah. Messi is legit.
That's not a nickname? Like that's his legit name?
That is his last name. It is Messi. So, and it's going to get messy for all the teams that play them.
Oh.
So speaking of names, back to our topic at hand, we're talking about homeschooling today, and we're even going to get into some of the misconceptions surrounding homeschooling. And one of the misconceptions is that people will make the comparison that homeschoolers are all just like sheltered. They're kind of like the people were in the village. They're just kind of trapped in this like 1800s box outside the real world. A lot of comparisons to the Amish. Do you have to be Amish or Mennonite to
such a great
homeschool your kids? And it made me think, what are the similarities between like the Amish and homeschoolers? And I think one of the obvious correlations are the names a lot of times. Because if you hear names of homeschooled kids versus names of like your average public school kid, sometimes there's a huge difference. Same with the Amish. So I thought it would be fun to play a game where I read some names and then you guys have to guess whether that is an Amish kid's name or a homeschool kid's name. And these are real names that I looked up on the internet.
Please tell me you came up with some... Wait, what'd you say, Ryan?
Says there a both option for some of them.
I mean, I guess it could be at the end of the day.
Venn
but
diagram.
Yeah. But before we get into that, here are a few Amish names that were just great, but I think were just clearly Amish and wouldn't have had you guys really guessing. But one is Jedediah Strubhar, Philemon Gundy, Jubilee Beckler, Uzziah Hochstetler, Joash Ringenberg, Alpha Smucker, and Jadiel Augsburger, which to me sounds like, some guy that just got drafted in the NFL draft.
I know. Right. maybe, is a, what is it? A blended, not a blend, maybe a blended family or I don't know. I'm going to get in trouble if I try to figure it out. But
trying to figure out the correct term to use.
Yes.
I'm not racist. I don't want to come across that way.
Maybe it's like an Amish,
right?
Maybe an Amish married a Quaker.
There we go.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Maybe we're just talking about like Kentucky Amish versus like Amish in Nigeria or something like that.
We call it cultural intermingling.
Yes. Intercourting.
Yes.
All right. So
I was going to ask, please tell me you have some good
for it.
background music for this. Did you come up with?
I failed you guys.
Ryan, can you get to playing something?
I don't even know if I don't even know if we could. Yeah. I was gonna say I don't even know if we could pull music up right now.
Yeah. I can't do anything.
Somebody left a turd on the bathroom floor.
Anything just come up there?
Preview works. But
oh, you heard it?
I heard it.
I didn't hear. I don't hear anything.
Force will be with you.
It's very quiet. But I think I am getting that.
You heard that, Ryan?
Yeah,
the Force?
Yeah, I'm here. I hear it.
Okay, so Ryan can hear it. Yeah. I mean, we have the sexy music that we've used. So we have this. Probably doesn't work for this game. How about this? I will just read them in a very exciting fashion. How about
Amish
that?
Voice.
All right. So, Amish or homeschool? Here's the first name. Gideon Yoder.
That's Amish.
I'm going to go Amish as well.
You guys are correct.
All right.
That is an Amish name.
It was Yoder. Right. That was the giveaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that was like somebody from Boston trying to pronounce Yoda's name. Yeah, it's that green guy, Yoder. All right, Amish or homeschool? Easton McMillan.
Chick-fil-A worker. So homeschool.
So homeschool, yeah. I'm gonna just for the sake of mix it up, I'll say Amish just in case it's a tricky one.
It is homeschooled. Oh. I couldn't really play a mixture. There you go, Ryan. All right, number 3. They actually start off easy. It's going to get harder.
Yeah, okay.
Number 3, Grace Armstrong.
Ryan, I'll let you go first on this one.
I'm going to say homeschool on that one.
I concur.
That is affirmative.
That is correct.
Nice.
All right, number 4. This is a tough one. Fanny Stoltzfus.
I gotta say Amish on that one.
Homeschool.
It is Amish. Tried to trick you. All right, number 5. There's 8 of these. Number 5, Elijah Felkins.
Well, the first name I think could go either way. Felkins was the last name?
Felkins.
That sounds Amish to me.
And it sounds like it could very easily be the name of like a middle or maybe eldest child in like a family of like 10 blonde kids. I'm gonna say homeschooled.
The correct answer is homeschooled.
Oh, man.
Ryan got that one right.
Streak is
I haven't been keeping score, by the way, so I don't know who's winning. All right, number 6, Lavina Troyer.
Troyer.
Any relation to Vern Troyer?
Maybe. It's the most famous Troyer.
It's the only other Troyer I know.
Of course, Vern Troyer is Mini-Me from Austin Powers, just in case anybody out there did not know.
Yeah, I had no idea what his name was. Other than Mini-Me. So, Lavina Troyer, I'm going Amish.
I'm going to go Amish as well.
It is Amish.
All right.
Lavina Troyer. All right, number 7, Jonas Miller.
Homeschool. Miller's too general.
Too plain for Amish and homeschool as well.
That is Amish.
What?
That's an Amish name. Yeah.
Man,
that kid's
white
like
bread
he's not
Amish people.
Yeah, he's not 100% Amish. There's something.
Yeah, he's one of those. So I sent a video, I think, to you guys of what I think were actually Mennonites driving a tractor to Buffalo Wild Wings, and it was a Mennonite guy and his gal on a date. And they got into the John Deere tractor after they ate, and I watched the whole thing happen. He did not help her in the tractor, by the way. But anyway,
that's clearly Mennonite.
That's right. That could have been Jonas Miller.
And here we are. So, we're ostracizing now our Mennonite and Amish listeners.
That's right. All of our Amish listeners.
Sorry to our Amish listeners out there. Comment if you're an Amish listener on TikTok.
Tell us what device you're watching it on.
All right, the last one. Eliza Williamson.
Homeschool. I'm going off Williamson, but Miller threw me, so I don't know.
Ryan, you guessed?
Amish, yeah.
That one is homeschooled.
I feel like I'm just taking stabs in the dark. I mean, there's so much overlap between these, you know?
Yeah. It just goes to show you that really, you really can't tell.
Yeah. No, you can't. And any one of them could have been hired at Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
It's true.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Fanny Stoltzfus told me my pleasure after I said thank you.
But it would have been more like, my pleasure.
Well, you know where they all connect is regularly making homemade butter. So
it's true. Yes. I would love if my kids made some homemade butter. That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They got to up their game here. All right. Well, since we don't have...
Do they have like an Amish boot camp you could send them to? Or like just give it a try for a week? You know?
Yeah.
Check it out.
Like the Blessed Mountain Hall of Kentucky.
Like a weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
Put them to work.
Just drop them off out there. So there is a place not far from here. I don't know if I don't even remember the name of it. I just know how to get there. But it's like in Kentucky, not far from here, because we're right on the line. And the Amish run it. It's like a little store, but they sell like all kinds of food. And
the bakery? The Amish bakery?
Yeah. So there's, I think that's, is it Slawbox?
Yeah, Schlabach is the bakery. And then there's the country pantry.
Yeah, and there's the country pantry. It's just out in the middle of nowhere. And they have the ice cream, the sandwiches, like all this. I mean, it is good stuff. But it is funny because they definitely use devices to run your debit cards. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they get around stuff like that. But anyway,
it run by Amish or is it Mennonites? Because Mennonites
maybe it is
strict on that.
I think,
but it is the people that cannot drive anything.
Oh,
so
anything.
I would assume that's Amish.
Yeah, that's usually Amish. Okay.
Yeah. Because you'll see guys that are actually hired to just drive them places, which I think is comical as well. Like, hey, I can't drive,
but we can
be driven. Pay an Uber driver. It's like Amish Uber. So if you need some extra cash, just go out to Guthrie and charge the Amish to drive them around. They just can't text you.
So. I was in Hopkinsville yesterday at Walmart, and that exact thing happened. There was a minivan that pulled up, and it was like a clown car. I mean, just one after the other. And they were getting their stuff and then hopping back in, which I guess I don't know if it's cheating. I don't know.
I think it is.
Again, if you're Amish listening to this, we'd like some insight.
Come on the show.
I'm trying to find a picture I took recently. So y'all talk. Hold on. But give me a second.
I could even pull up the video so that everybody that is able to watch can at least see part of this if it will actually come up. Just let you know I'm not lying about this. So I think you can see that. That is Buffalo Wild Wings. There's the tractor. There's the couple right there. I'll go ahead and hit play here. And then you can see that he clearly does not help her into said tractor. He climbs in himself, which I think he has to, but then she just kind of has to climb in herself.
Oh, not even.
So apparently, like, chivalry is not something practiced. Their culture. Oh yeah, that. And those pies are delicious.
Yes, they are.
By the way, yes, very good. In fact, this weekend I may have to go out and do that. All right, so we didn't want to spend the entire episode talking about the Amish, but there are some correlations sometimes between, those people that are just completely off the grid and homeschoolers, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But if you've missed us, then that means that you haven't been listening to our dollops, because we've been producing content. Mm-hmm. You're just not listening. No. So shame on you. That's what I thought. You should be listening to us. So all of us have done. Right. Yes, we've been cranking out the dollops. I mean, all over your face. And and Josh's specifically. Go ahead. I was gonna say, Josh's specifically, you have to really watch. You can't just listen, because I made the mistake of on my Monday run, I listened to Josh's dollop, and half of his dollop was him showing embarrassing photos of himself. Now, I did go back to splice some of yours to put on our social media, so I did see the pictures. But apparently I missed the whole tattoo thing. I guess I was like running and maybe almost getting run over by a car, and I just didn't hear that. So make sure you listen or watch the dollops. But we got some comments on our dollops. So there have been some people interacting. I don't think it's our normal crowd, though. I think we got some outsiders in. So Ryan, what do we got?
Well, first off, I want to read a comment from one of the videos of my dollop, where I was talking about the Bible being great literature. So just one comment on that TikTok, and the guy says, his name's Charlie, said, "I thought you were the dad from Young Sheldon at first." So
oh my goodness!
Take that as.
Do we have a picture of the dad from Young Sheldon?
Let me see. I could probably pull
Google
one up really quick.
This guy?
Yeah.
Wait, he's saying. Wait, who is he saying
like
that you look like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which maybe it's just I got a good bit of gray in my hair, so maybe it's that. Makes me look a little aged.
Did you reply and say, "I am indeed the dad from"?
I said I might be.
That's awesome.
But then the hot action in the comments on TikTok came from the LeBron or MJ video from Jeff's dollop. We got a couple of good ones in here. A lot of people upset by your assertion that MJ
it touched a nerve
is better. People seem to be really, really passionate about basketball players that make a lot more money than they do. So
yeah, I mean they clearly are wrong, and I feel sorry for them.
It's because Gen Zs are so sensitive. Because those are the only ones saying LeBron. Maybe the younger millennials.
Some millennials out there too that I don't claim. But let's see. We got Mason here. He said, "I love LeBron James. I really do. Love him way more than MJ. But the all-time Jordan." He said way more than MJ, but all-time Jordan, but LeBron is just stronger. I'd pick Michael. I think there's some typos in there, but it seems like he's saying that he loves LeBron, but he thinks that Michael is stronger.
Sounds like he can't commit. Is
because he said MJ's all-time, but LeBron is stronger.
Yeah,
that's what it's
spoken like a true politician in a debate.
Yeah, because you don't know.
It's not picking a side.
It's like he made fun of you, but you don't know it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, thank you.
Thank you, but wait.
What?
And then let's see, who was the one? Majesty said, so it's better to lose in the first round than to lose in the finals. And then a couple of crying emojis and said, absolutely lost.
I'm lost at what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan won 6 championships.
Yeah.
Losing the first round once.
He didn't lose did he ever lose in the finals?
No,
never
lost
6,
in the
right?
finals. Yeah,
6-0.
He just lost in the first round.
I would say
early
not losing out of 6 tries in the finals is better than losing in the finals.
I would say not losing to the Dallas Mavericks makes you better.
Yeah.
But
yeah, when you're on a super team.
As a Mavericks fan.
Getting beat by Dirk.
That's right. Man, that team was so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
So much fun.
Mr.
I talked about that on my
Consistency,
dog a little
Dirk.
bit. Yeah.
Hey, but you know who else was on that team? Clarksville High, class of 96.
Oh, yeah,
Sean Marion, baby.
That's right. I forgot about Sean being on that team.
Yep.
Sean used to spank me in the locker room. It was awesome.
I'm sure he remembers that fondly.
Probably does. Yep. Now he's listening.
I say this kind of anytime he's on. When he was playing, and my wife would get she's gotten so tired of hearing it, and she's in the kitchen, so she's probably going to roll her eyes. But Sean Marion would not have passed geometry if it wasn't for me. He sat right in front of me, and there were a few tests where there was some going on.
So
and he was so
he's
tall,
a cheater.
like, he could just look right down. I'm not saying he's a cheater. No, I'm not gonna say that because Sean Marion.
So maybe the Dallas Mavericks cheated, and that's why.
I'm just saying we were. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say that.
Way to go.
Because I'm sure Sean's listened to this, and I don't want to.
LeBron's legacy has been impacted by Sean cheating off you in geometry.
It all goes back. It all goes back to my sophomore year math class. Maybe that was my junior year. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like Back to the Future, November 12th, 1955, that place and time has some sort of significance. Mm-hmm. Like everything rises and falls on your math class in 10th grade.
That's right. If we had changed, if I had sat in a different desk, who knows?
Yes. Yeah.
LeBron could have won the championship and we would not be having this conversation.
Yeah. We'd be saying Dirk who?
And last one I'll read.
Certainly we've lost all of our listeners by now.
Everybody is lost.
It's a rambling mess.
So last one I'll read is there was some back and forth between I believe it was you, Jeff, and Seiko, I'm going to say his name is.
Let's go, Seiko.
And some back and forth, and then at a certain point he says, LOL, the way you talk sounds like you haven't watched a game since the 90s, just like every other Jordan fan.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't. That's awesome. He pegged you.
Yeah. How do you know? Man. What's funny is he clearly didn't listen to the entire dollop, because I actually used that exact argument that he used on me as part of my basis for why I believe that Jordan is better, because I said I've watched a lot of LeBron, I watched a lot of Jordan. In fact, I grew up hating Jordan because I was a Celtics fan. I hated Jordan. I didn't want him to win. Like, there was no way I wanted to give that guy credit. But yeah, I've watched it all, and I go back to I've never seen somebody play as great as Michael Jordan. So,
and I'm in line with that because I grew up a Knicks fan, and
oh yeah,
he was the Knick killer. He and Reggie Miller for the Pacers, like, could never overcome those guys. Dude hitting 3-pointers in like 11 seconds. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I was a Space Jam kid, so I'm always blind to Jordan. He's the best.
That's right. Clearly the better of the Space Jams.
Oh, yes.
Definitely. That's all that matters.
Definitely the better of the Space Jams.
And it had Larry Bird in it, too.
That's true.
And Bill Murray. Yeah, Don Cheadle. Get out of here.
And what's the actor that plays
Newman from Seinfeld.
From Seinfeld, yeah.
Yeah.
He's in there.
That guy.
He's great. Whatever his name is.
Yep. Is it Wayne Knight?
Yes, I couldn't place it.
There we go.
It's Wayne Knight. That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bruce Wayne, but I know that's not it. So, any other comments, or it was pretty much that?
No, I
right?
think that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Most of the heat came in the MJ-Lebron debate.
Yeah, we ticked off the internet with that. So let us know by commenting, because we do like to engage with your comments. If there's any hot topic that we can just kind of throw out there like a Molotov cocktail, like let us know, because we want to engage the trolls of the internet. That's part of that's part of our mission here at DudeFax, is to just hang around with trolls and let them know how much we appreciate them. So, yeah.
Maybe we should talk about homeschooling versus public schooling. That might be a hot topic.
Ruffle some feathers.
That might be a hot topic. Yep. Of course, I don't know what do you call like church going female Karens? Because I don't know if you can call them trolls.
Mm-hmm.
Like another name besides Karen, or
Yeah,
the biblical name for Karen?
Crunchy mom. I've heard that term quite a bit.
Definitely.
Yeah. But that mom is only voting homeschool.
But I'm just saying we need to say something to fire up the crunchy moms.
Yeah.
That way we can get into a crunchy mom debate. We'll see. All right. So that is our start to this podcast. That barking means it's time to take a break and quiet a dog and come back and talk about homeschooling versus public schooling and get into some good, serious conversation. Thank you guys for joining. We love you guys. And we'll see you in just a bit. DudeFaxers, thanks for listening today. Hey, guess what? There's still more great content in part 2, so hopefully you're going to stick around for that as we get into some good, serious discussion, yet still fun, light, and humorous as well. We want you to check out all our Dude Dollops. Hopefully you've done that, so go back and listen to those. Comment. We'll read those. And hey, check out my sister's podcast. It is called For God So Loved. And you can look for links for that on our social media, but great podcast as well. You'll find it on Spotify and YouTube too. So here comes the second part. Let's go.
Hey, welcome to part 2 of this week's podcast. Grant is with us, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Grant, say hi. He's lost his voice, but he's here in spirit. He's not.
You can see him on TikTok.
That's right. Hey, if you're just joining us, thanks for jumping in to part 2 of this week's podcast. We're going to be talking about homeschooling versus public schooling. And does Scripture have anything to say about it? What are the pros and cons of each? Is there one that's better than the other? And then what's our experience been? Because all 3 of us have gone to public school, but Jeff and I, our families have homeschooled our kids, and they've even kind of had a hybrid experience in some ways. So we just want to talk about our experiences in that, and hopefully we ruffle some feathers.
Yes.
Right? I think in some way it's probably going to happen. Either by the Karens, we're going to ruffle theirs, or the crunchy moms. Is that what we decided? The Karens or the crunchy moms?
Or the crunchy moms that are Karens.
Or the Karens that are crunchy moms.
Yes.
I do have a story about that.
Or the LeBron fans. Because they just deserve to get slapped.
That's right.
We've already upset them this episode.
In a sermon I was preaching several years ago, I meant to refer to crunchy moms, but I called them crusty moms.
That's a whole different.
That's a whole different kind of mom. So, so we're going to talk about public school and homeschooling on this, and as youth ministers, and all 3 of us have worked in youth ministry. We've had kids that were both public school and homeschool, and we have some unique takes, I think, from that time of our life as well. So, what we thought we'd do is just first give you kind of maybe a brief overview of what our experiences were as public schoolers. When you guys want to jump off on that?
It was amazing. No, I mean, obviously we're all public schooled. That's all I knew. When I was a kid, you didn't even really think much about homeschooling. It wasn't until I maybe got older that I heard, oh, there are people that do school at home. I honestly, I was kind of indifferent about school. There were things I liked about it, but it was mostly like the things I was involved with, like the extracurricular activities. But as far as going to class every day and finding like my identity in my friends from school, I didn't really. It was more, thankfully through the church that I did. And so in high school, when I sort of made that connection by going to school with some of the same kids I went to church with, that was probably my favorite time in school. But I thank God for that, because I think God used that during my time in public school to keep me grounded, because quite frankly, I can honestly say, every single day I'm around the world, so to speak, but that was probably the heaviest time in my life, from age 5 all the way through college, of me being like right smack dab in the middle of secularism, I guess, for lack of a better term. And it was most of my day and most of my time. So you definitely are, going to experience the world and have to, wrestle with those things as a Christian. But at the same time, it's not all bad, not all darkness. I mean, I have some great relationships and great memories, and learned some great things from my time in public schooling. And I would never tell a parent now, like, hey, homeschooling is the only way. There's a lot of great kids, to include Ryan, who was one of my youth, that came from public schooling. So, I wouldn't knock it, even though I am a homeschool parent and enjoy the benefits of that.
And I think, my experience public schooling, there's obviously, when you have a group of young hormonal kids and teenagers, school is just a weird place socially for kids.
Oh yeah.
Throughout the entire experience, but that your experience may vary. Everybody's experience there is kind of unique to them, but the thing that, from my experience of public schooling, that I thought could have been better, and the thing I didn't like about public school, which is the thing that made me, by the time I was a junior in high school, I was over this. I was like, I'm done. I'm ready to get out of here. Is the way that they formulate everything around testing so much, and not so much around actually teaching. I feel like we do a pretty bad disservice to our young people in America from the way that we focus just on test scores, instead of actually, making sure kids are learning and grasping and actually enjoying the things that they're experiencing and doing in class. I think that that's probably the big fail of public school, in my opinion, is just how we collectively, I don't know, put those expectations on kids that don't really make sense, I feel like, because they're not accurate to how a lot of kids learn. And then also just with the way kids, there's too many kids in public school a lot of times. Kids don't get focus. I was in a school of like, every class had like 35 kids, and one teacher can't effectively work with those kids.
I remember trying to go eat lunch with you guys at your school, Ryan, and like they didn't even have enough seats in the cafeteria. Kids were like sitting on the floor and standing up.
Well, and they wouldn't let more than like 8 people sit at a table for some reason, even though there's plenty of room.
It's ridiculous. But it is funny, because it does seem like you do all this work in school. You're talking about testing, But yeah, at the end of the day, colleges don't care about that. You know, all they care about is what did you get on your ACT? What did you get on your SAT? That's what's going to get you in the door.
Your mom goes to college.
Yeah, I remember. Homeschool. Jeff and I went to the same public school. Jeff and I went to the same high school for a few years, and but my experience, especially late elementary school and through middle school, if you guys saw the picture that I shared last time, the glasses I had those until I forget, into 8th grade. So all the way through middle school, it was terrible. But up until 4th grade, I loved it. And then we moved to Clarksville. I got those glasses, and it's like I dropped
the glasses were
4 or 5 social rungs, and never really recovered until my junior year, and senior year. And senior year, I went to a different high school and in a new town, and so I was like, I ain't a nerd, suckers. You know, I was able to go in and
I'm a cool kid.
But I'd already been set in my social, whatever. But I had great friends there. But like Jeff was saying, my core friend group were kids in the youth group and at church. But I definitely played sides in that. Like when I was around my friends at school, I was one way. When I was around my youth group friends, I was a different way. And I actually had a friend, a quasi friend at that time. His name was Dakin Prine. I doubt Dakin listens to this, but he was a year younger. And my junior year, I had left the church. Jeff and I were my family started going to a different church. So I was a traitor. And I actually went to the rival church. And kind of like if you're a UT fan and you start rooting for Alabama, I mean, it was on that level. It was almost on that level.
The whole idea of rival churches is really funny.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just ahead of your time.
I know. But I was hanging out with my school friends, and I was speaking a certain way, acting a certain way. And Dakin, who went to church with me in the youth group, he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, don't you?" I guess I just started going or something. He said, "Don't you go to church here or there or whatever?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, why don't you act like it?" Ooh. And because this kid was like a year younger than me. And
Jesus juke.
It was a major Jesus juke. But that's already stuck in my head, and it was one of those moments of, I'm really not acting the way I need to or speaking the way I should for what I claim. But that was kind of my experience with that, just kind of back and forth. And coming out of high school, I don't know if I really carry a ton of positive as far as educationally or anything like that. It was more some social awareness. And I definitely had some experiences I wish I hadn't gotten myself into. But I don't think it was necessarily because it was public school. I think it was just because I didn't really have a firm grasp of my faith at that point.
Whenever you said rival churches, I'm just thinking of West Side Story.
It was very West Side Story. Yeah. Yeah. It's like when both youth groups have skate night on the same night, rainbow skating rink. And
yes.
Some reason they throw down.
That's
Switchblade
right.
combs. They comb their hair.
Switchblade Bibles.
So even though Jeff and I have public school background, we both have decided, or we both did decide to homeschool our kids. Jeff, what brought you to that decision with your family?
Yeah, so for us, homeschooling was never much of a consideration until we had kids. And part of that was the misconceptions about homeschooling. I knew there were some good homeschool kids that I'd worked with in youth groups. But then I'd seen other kids that were homeschooled who were just sort of handed a packet and told to do it. And it just seemed like they just hung out at home and played video games all day. So I didn't really know how much I didn't know enough to really have a true opinion on it or to truly respect it like I do now. But I remember hearing Russell Moore, a guy that I deeply respect, say around the time my daughter was probably 2 years old, parents, we as Christians need an exit strategy from public schools. And that really got me thinking, because I was thinking, what exit strategy? Obviously, I know that public schools can teach things that, I would teach differently to my kids, but I was, brought up in a public school. I'm fine. It wasn't necessarily a political thing for me, because I know it is for some homeschool families. But more of a spiritual thing. And I know we'll probably talk some scripture here in a second, but, Ephesians says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. To me, as a dad, as I'm trying to learn how to be a parent, I'm thinking, how do I do that? And the reality was, as my wife is an educated and experienced educator, she taught in the public school system. Before she stopped to homeschool our kids, she went to college to be an educator. I was a youth pastor. My job revolved around teaching. And so as I read scripture about how to be a parent, I kept coming back to scripture that talked about teaching and giving this instruction of the Lord. Deuteronomy 6:5, the Shema, that is followed up in Deuteronomy 6:7. You're going to teach your kids these things diligently, and you shall talk about them, where you live and in your house and the time and where you're going. The Great Commission, go and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. There was this command from Scripture to go and teach, and what better place to teach and make disciples than in the home with your children? So as I really wrestled with those passages, the Holy Spirit, I think, just brought me to a place where I began to think about homeschooling. And I remember my reservation, and this is part of the misconceptions on homeschooling. My reservation was, I want them to be socialized. I don't want my kid to be, one of these kids that is so sheltered that they're not able to communicate with other kids or don't have those experiences. Not that I want them necessarily thrown to the wolves in the real world, but I don't want them to be so sheltered that they're shocked by seeing the real world. And that was probably my hesitation, but I eventually came to the conclusion that God's got that handled. And he's given us all the tools and the talents to be able to really be educators in our children's lives. And for us, it worked. I know it doesn't work for all families, and not everybody has the opportunity to do that financially or whatever. But for us, it worked. It just seemed like we had the sort of skill set to be able to do this. And it was about answering a call from God, above anything. It wasn't because public schools teaching some sort of curriculum that I don't, believe. Some of those things might be true, but that wasn't why we decided to do it. It was, hey, we have this opportunity here, and we think we can do it, quite frankly, better, and give our children the opportunity to pursue not only the things of God, but the things that they're truly passionate about and what God has gifted them. Ryan was kind of alluding to this as he was talking about testing. We'll give them tests, but it's more about, hey, what is my daughter, Karis? What is she interested in? And letting her take off with that. What is my son Silas interested in? Letting him take off with those things and pursue those things and really learn, those things that are going to serve him best as an adult.
Ours is similar in the fact that we didn't take, they were homeschooled, or I'm sorry, they were public schooled for the first 3 years or so, until like second and third grade. So they're a year apart. And we had a friend that was homeschooling, and Jeremy, Jeff, who you know. And in fact, we were at his house. You and I went to his house in Midland. I forget where he was, but I went to do a funeral, and you went with me.
That's right.
And we were at his house, and I think I was asking him, like, why did you decide to do this? Because they have several kids that they were walking through, all different ages. And he said, we just felt like we couldn't we're called to disciple our kids, and we just felt like we couldn't do that with them in public school 6 hours a day, 7, whatever it is, and then coming home. And that just kind of stuck in my head. We had never thought about it, because to me, I thought homeschoolers were just weird. And it's because of this. I didn't tell you guys I was going to do this. I hope it'll work. I want to share. This girl won the Scripps National Spelling Bee in '97. So the year I'm graduating high school. And
I think I remember this.
And this is what I thought all homeschoolers were like. Let me see if I can get this to play here. This is her winning. Oh, come on, YouTube. It was playing just a second ago. So this is
that ESPN2 graphic, by the way.
Yeah. This is the final word and she wins with. And I think the kid she's playing may also be homeschooled. And she had kind of like been like this the whole time. And her interaction with like the other kids was just so awkward. And I don't know, this may not even be the.
She's probably a CEO of some big corporation now.
She probably is. I was going to try to. Yeah. And there's some weird parts, really weird parts. And the poor girl. All right, let me stop sharing this.
Should Google her.
Yeah.
See what she's up to.
But that's what I thought. I thought all homeschoolers were like that. So I had this convergence when you and I, Jeff, were at First Baptist and going to Jeff's house, because the youth in that church, like half of them were homeschooled, but they were normal. Like, that's what blew my mind. Like, they were some of the most well-adjusted kids ever. I'm like, wait a minute, did you watch the Scripps Spelling Bee? Because that's what you're supposed to be like. And but they were well-adjusted, and it really shattered, those kids really shattered my whole thought of what a homeschool kid is like. And they could communicate well, and they were well-mannered, and I don't know, all that stuff. So then we coincide with my kids' early elementary, and Jeremy says that to us. So I come home, and I'm just talking with Bridget. It's kind of on our minds. And then God begins to convict us and put on our heart that we need to do this for our kids. So they were in a great county school. We didn't have any issues with curriculum, any issues with teachers. In fact, where we were living, I mean, across the street, there was a neighbor's house, and their backyard was the schoolyard. There was a fence. So there were days we would watch our kids from the front door run across the street, run through their friend's yard across the street, and jump the fence and go to school. I mean, it was that kind of setup. So ours was just a conviction that if we were going to raise our children the way we felt God was leading us to, it was going to require more time around them. Now, we had no idea what we were doing. We were not set up to educate our kids the way Jeff and Stephanie felt like they were. Now, being in youth ministry, I understood kids to an extent, but the first year or two was terrible. I mean, we thought we had made a massive mistake, especially the first year, because we didn't know what to teach them. We had no idea you could design your own curriculum around what your kids' needs were. So the only thing we knew was to use something that Bridget's sister had used for her kids at one point, and it was like an online virtual academy that was used for public school kids who were homebound for some reason. And so they would log in. It's called K-12. And the issue was that we had like one computer. They had to share it, but they were on two separate tracks for curriculum. And so one kid had to do their level of history and science and English and math, and the other kid had to do their level, and then we're sharing a computer. And we brought them out of public school because we wanted to have positive time with them. And what we realized is that we liked our kids even less after school when we homeschooled them than when they come home from public school. So we really had to figure that out. And they struggled and all that. So we eventually realized, you can design this for your kids. Had a lot of flexibility. My wife did it all. An amazing job of building their curriculum. to where they could do it together, but with different expectations. And I've got kids that learn completely opposite of each other. So one does very well in a sit down at a desk, listen to an instructor setting. And then I have one that she zones out at that point and she has to be doing something. And then they're both interested in different things. So it allowed us to guide them that way. But I am not the kind of guy that thinks everyone should homeschool. I tend to lean towards, if you can do it, I strongly encourage it. If you can make it work out. But that was our story. And now our kids have both graduated and have done fine. But our goal really in all of that, we wanted to make sure that through this time, our girls were able to understand and grasp biblical worldview and values, and be at the point where they can make the decision themselves and not because we believe it. And two, that if they don't know something, they can figure out how to learn it. Because once you get into college, if that's your choice, then that's kind of what college is all about. You're teaching yourself a lot of things to fill in the gaps from what you get from professors. Mm-hmm. And then that they can just kind of figure out their path. So it was a good experience once we figured it out, and I am thankful that we did it that way. So talking about kids in youth group, you two guys, we were all in that church together, serving in youth ministry at First Baptist here in town. What kind of takeaways did you get from being around a youth ministry that was pretty evenly split, maybe like 40-60? 35, 65 homeschool to public school?
I think that the typical, what we think of, kind of what you said, Josh, the weird antisocial, or not necessarily antisocial, but like just awkward, not socialized homeschool kid. I think that that stereotype exists because there are some kids that fit that bill. And I think my experience growing up was more that some kids fit that and some kids don't. I had friends that were homeschooled that were very, normal, quote unquote, that, weren't these super awkward kids that, we did stuff like any other kid would. And I feel like at First Baptist, working in that youth ministry, that the majority of kids fit that group more so than the other. And I think that there was a really good community of homeschooling at First Baptist that, and those kids had a good social group within the church, within the student ministry. And I think that, really created some really intelligent, smart kids and, really, kids that really stuck with things as they got older. And I, have really close friendships with a lot of them as they got older, and, we kept in touch. And I think that First Baptist just had a great, those kids seem to have a good head on their shoulders and have a good, upbringing in homeschooling that is not emblematic of what we constantly see from people in their, conceptions of it and what it may or may not be. Yeah.
Well, and what you just said, Ryan, most of them seem to have a good head on their shoulders. That's been my experience too, is that, there are kids that have a great head on their shoulders that go to public school. But whatever we might want to say the percentage is, that might be 4 out of every 10 kids seem to have a pretty good head on their shoulders. When it comes to homeschool kids, the majority of the time, and my experience has been that the majority of them have a good head on their shoulders. Now there's some turds that are homeschool kids as well. I mean, you get that. You have the ones that are like Mennonites and, they're sheltered and they don't celebrate any holidays or birthdays and they wear long skirts and all that stuff, all that jazz. You have that. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. But I mean, you have that. And then you have the other extreme and hey, this kid got in trouble in public school, so now his parents don't know what to do, so they just decide to homeschool him, and they, basically let them watch TV all day. And then you got sort of those that are in the middle of that spectrum. There's a certain innocence, I would say, with a lot of homeschool kids, but I think it all depends on the parent and how they approach it. But most of the homeschool kids that I've worked with just seem to have a good head on their shoulders. If anything, they have a maturity that a lot of the public school kids do not have. Not all public school kids, but a lot of the public school kids. They're able to converse with adults. They're able to problem solve. They're able to be independent when they need to be independent. They're able to plan a little bit better. There is just a certain maturity that I've seen. And thankfully, and I'm going to give 99.9% of the credit to my wife and God, our kids have followed suit. I think my kids are way more mature at their age than I was when I was their age, way more. The things that they do and the things that they think about, it's unbelievable.
I can confirm that.
Attribute a lot of that to, yeah, they're probably more mature than I am now.
Well, I want to hit on something that both you guys said. Ryan mentioned something about, at a lot of those kids that were in our youth group, that there was a community for them that were homeschooled. And there were things like classical conversations and discipleship tutorial, different things around that provided like a co-op or a tutorial. And I really think that's the linchpin for what allows the normal homeschoolers to be normal. Is usually they're in community in some way. And any person or any kid that's isolated becomes socially awkward. So the propensity to that is maybe greater in homeschool. If you don't get your child involved in some sort of co-op or community, and then if your kid is in church, I mean, they're double dipping. So they've got their youth group and, maybe, and then they've got their school group. But that's got to be a part of it. I think it's really hard for your kid to grow up and be socially adept if they're not around other people. And then the same is true for public schoolers, right? Like there's just as many socially awkward public schoolers as there are socially awkward homeschoolers, right? And so it's not homeschoolers are weird because they're not around kids. Well, there's kids that are around kids all the time and they're weird and they can't socialize and they're terrors or turds. They're in both. They're in both camps.
Left a turd on the bathroom floor.
That's right. They're in both camps. So not just.
Did you say they're terrorists?
Yes. Yeah. Hey, that's terrorist, right? I'll say it. But where was I going with that? But so you have to have that in mind. But then the other thing is, you were talking about like there's homeschool kids might be better at relating to adults. And because I think they are around mom and dad more often in conversation or whatever that looks like. But I remember something Vodi Bachman said, has been years. And I remember some sermon he was talking about, but he said, if you take, because they do family-based ministry in their church, like there's not a youth group, there's not this or that, or at least not divided out. They're all together for worship. And he would say, if you took a 14-year-old boy and put him in a room filled with 14-year-old boys, an hour a week for a year, he's going to come out acting like a 14-year-old boy. But if you took a 14-year-old boy and you placed him in a Bible study with a 50-year-old man and he was in there or 50-year-old man and he was in there for an hour a week for a year, he's going to come out a lot more mature because of that. So there's something to be said about having, having your kids around people who are more mature than them. They're going to rise to that. And children and teenagers, especially, and maybe all of us, they're going to kind of attain to whatever the is considered normal. or expected of them. I think expectation is a huge thing. So the friends I had in public school growing up that were the more mature ones, their parents had a high expectation of how they would be, how they would act, how they would speak, the manners that they would have towards adults. Things like you'll look them in the eye, shake their hand. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. All those things, are kind of ingrained. Because you got rude, like you were saying, Jeff, rude, terrible kids that are homeschooled. So a lot of it does go back to the parent. No matter where you're putting your kid, you have to set that expectation for what you want to see from them. And if you let them just spend all day on the computer playing video games and they're only doing school for an hour a day or whatever, that's what's going to come out.
Yeah, that's what I think my experience of public school was. Everything was not just going to school and that was the end of my learning for the day. I would come home and I had parents that taught me at home and that, expected things from me at home. And so, I think that whether you're in public school or homeschooled, that parental, leading aspect is crucial. And I think that's the more important thing when we think about whether you should public school or homeschool your kids, because not everybody can homeschool, and that's fine. Yeah. Public school is works and it's perfectly good, and it's good for kids that are underprivileged and don't have anything else. But I think that you as a parent, when you're thinking about raising your kids, and I don't have a kid, so obviously I'm saying this just theoretically, but I think it's important to make sure that you are supplementing what your kids are learning with your own teachings and not just expecting them to learn everything from one source.
Yeah. And that's school or church.
Yeah.
Because, parents might say, well, I don't want to educate my kids, so I'm going to send them to school. But man, how many times, and I've been guilty of this. Like, well, my kids are in church. Like that's where the discipleship's happening. And it's all it all comes back to the parent in both of those situations. We've talked a little bit around some misconceptions of homeschooling or even public school, and there was one I kind of wanted to talk about is that I think, especially in Christian realm, is that, and we have hit on this a little bit, but Christians who homeschool their kids are going to grow up to be like little angels, and mine have. I don't know about your kids, Jeff, but no. Well, we talked about how great your kids are. But our girls went to all the tutorials and co-ops were Christian that they went to. And ours have turned out okay. They're not perfect, far from it. They've had their issues. But some of the things that they were exposed to and some of the values of some of the kids that were at these, it would have been the exact same thing they would have gotten at public school, right? So it's not this 100% foolproof plan to protect your kids from the world. Everything your public school kid is going to see in school, your homeschool kid is going to see on TikTok, right? I mean, and here and all, it's there. They're being educated. So it goes far beyond the location of education. There's so much depends, it's just broken record, just depends on the environment in your home that you're setting for your kids either way.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And we've had opportunity to have our kids involved in public school when we were at West Point. Of course, they're homeschooled, but West Point allowed them to go over to the public school, which was right across the street from our house. And Karis, as a middle schooler, got to take band and art, and Silas got to go over and do some classes as well. And so they got that public school taste as well. And then here in Clarksville, they've both gone to private schools a couple of days a week. And so Silas is even playing on his school's basketball team, both Christian private schools. But with that said, the socialization is never the problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, going back to what you said earlier, Josh, I mean, there's awkward kids who can't socialize in public school. Our kids have both been able to socialize, and my son especially is an extrovert, so he has no problem socializing. It comes down to, do I want to shelter them? No, not necessarily. Do I want to keep them from certain things of the world? Well, obviously, I want to help protect, but I also know I'm not going to be able to do that forever. I want them to sort of be able to decide what is right, what is wrong, what does God expect of me. And rather than sort of throwing them into the fire, so to speak, I think homeschooling has allowed us to sort of coach them as they're going along in that aspect. In a lot of ways, I think we have held them to higher expectations and expected more of them. But when it comes to combating the secularism of the world, I think we've been able to sort of walk through that with them a little bit more than if we only spent like 1 or 2 hours with them a day, if that makes sense.
And that's the exact reason we started homeschooling. We probably did not do as good of a job educating our kids. I know we didn't. They struggled with algebra. They struggled with some of the sciences, some writing, stuff like that, probably stuff that they would have done much better. And we do feel like we may have done a disservice there. But the other thing is that both of my girls, man, and this is by God's grace, they know what they believe and why they believe it. And they will see things in society and automatically have like their spidey sense go off, right? Like they can discern this is probably not a good direction or a good thing. And I don't know, like you're saying, if they would have got that, because when they come home from school, especially when they're young, I mean, you got to get the wiggles out. So especially my youngest, so go out, play with your friends, and then you come in and it's dinner, and then it's homework, and then it's bath time, and it's time for bed. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of our flow and why we went into it. And again, this isn't the same for every family, but I'll go out and say, I think if you're able to homeschool your kids, I would encourage it. And also, I do think that you probably, if the parent is on it and engaged at home through the process, you probably have a better chance of your kids developing, if you're leading them in a Christian way, discipling, of developing that worldview, than if you don't have that time with them during the day. And I've said that before and kind of gotten ripped on for it, but I believe it. Yeah.
I
So
think that,
come at me, LeBron.
I'll just say that I think that if you are if you have the intent of like just sheltering your child from anything and everything, I think that is the wrong motive. I think that that's true. I think it's important as in adolescence to be exposed to and challenged by things, and it's the role of their parent to teach them how to navigate those things and not to just try to keep them from it, because at some point you're not going to be there, and you gotta prepare them for it. And just sheltering them totally from things is gonna make them worse off in the end than it would be if you just let them experience it and then teach them how to work through it and navigate those things in life.
I've seen that backfire a lot of times with kids from the youth group who were just sheltered so much, and then they got out into the real world and just went crazy. So that can't happen. And I think that also, again, goes back to the parents. There's got to be consistency in the home. So if they're raised in a situation where the parents are just trying to shelter and that's their motive rather than a calling by God, and then they don't see maybe the things match up with what the parents say versus what they do, I think they'll eventually become adults and make their own decisions, and can very easily to choose to go the complete opposite way from what the parents originally raised them as. But if they see that consistency and love and sort of that understanding, and even I think it's important as parents, give them choices, let them choose, whenever they get older and can start making those decisions, what to pursue and what to do. And, I think they'll begin to learn some of those things while they are still at home, while you still have an opportunity to coach them every day versus learning it when they're off in college and maybe not having that same type of mentorship as close.
What do you guys think about the statement people make sometimes of, well, if we take all of our Christian kids out of school, how are kids in the public school going to learn about Jesus? Or I want my kid to go in and be a light in a dark place.
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, obviously, I think that there are a lot of kids in public schools who are doing a lot of great things for the kingdom and have that calling on their life. And, I can sympathize with that, because I feel like, as somebody who worked in church ministry for so many years, I felt like I was in a Christian bubble, and it was great. But at the same time, I felt a calling to get outside of that bubble. And now in the Army, I am outside that bubble, still doing work for the kingdom. But now I'm around people that aren't kingdom minded more than I am people that are kingdom minded. And so obviously I think God calls us to that. And, those are great opportunities for public school kids. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that homeschool kids won't have that opportunity, because both of my kids have been around a lot of unchurched kids. Where you live, where you work, your kids are going to be around unchurched kids. And we've allowed ours to have unchurched friends and not sheltered them from that or anything like that. And it's been amazing to watch our kids both invite their friends to church and share the gospel with them and pray for them. Those things are important. And so, yeah, I do see there being a great value in being able to be a missionary in a public school, but I also think that's God's calling. For some people, that's going to be their reality, but for others, they're going to, be missionaries as a homeschool kid, in their neighborhood, where they live, where they work.
So either option is a good option. And like I've said, I would encourage you to at least consider it if you can do it, just because of kind of where society is. I probably tend more to the end of protect your kids, but but you look at, and I'm just going to point Jeff out just because I saw him in high school and knew him there. Like, Jeff, you're a great example of a kid that came out spiritually healthy. And now you weren't perfect, but you made it through that. And by the way, you weren't perfect, but because you're a Patriots fan, you will never reach perfection.
That's true.
So you guys watching, look at Jeff, and he's and Ryan. I just didn't know Ryan in high school, but these were two guys that went through those years in public school and came out loving the Lord, well adjusted, and mature, spiritually mature. So we can give testimony to that right here on the podcast. So there's pros and cons both ways. There's positives and negatives, things that work, things that don't. But I did want us maybe just to hit on two more things here as we get ready to wrap up. One is, if you do think about homeschooling, I wanted to talk through just some things that you need to consider. And maybe we can do that to wrap up. But I wanted to go back real quick. You mentioned the Shema in Deuteronomy 6, and then again, I think it's chapter 11 or something like that, where this is mentioned, where as you rise and as you go about your day, you need to talk about God and his commands. That's what we're called to do as parents in educating our kids, is to teach them God's ways. And if your kid is home 6 hours during the day because you homeschool, great. Talk about God's word when you can, but you still got to take time to teach them math. If your kids are at public school and you've got a few hours at home instead of a long time, teach them God's word, when you have opportunity, as they rise, as they go to bed, all these things. That's just what we're called to do. And if you're doing that, you're fulfilling your call as a parent when it comes to educating your kids. Jeff and I, we've been through this, and again, Ryan, definitely pipe in if you have. input here, but what would be some things that if someone is considering homeschooling their children that they need to consider? And I'll put one thing out there is just, can you do it financially? That a lot of times requires you to live off of one income. And then there's a cost. I mean, we thought it would be cheaper to not have to pay all the school fees and everything. Good Lord, the cost of toilet paper, the amount we went through having two girls at home and my wife all day long. We were going through it like nothing. Thank goodness we didn't homeschool, much through COVID. So
they were dropping a lot of dollops.
They were dropping a lot of dollops.
No, cost is a big one. And I think that's something, I don't think we fully consider that either, other than going down to one income. But definitely the investment that goes into it financially, but also time-wise too. It is a full-time job, really is. Now, as the kids get a little bit older, I will say that, Stephanie's been able to pull back a little bit, especially with Kara's, because she's a little bit more independent. She's still doing a lot, but not quite maybe what she did, when she was younger. But, it's a full-time job in addition to all the other things that got to get done around the house as well. And so that's something to consider, not to scare anybody off, but just to give you a reality check. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I would say is, especially for those that maybe think, well, I'm not qualified to do it. If God's calling you to do it, he will qualify you and equip you. Now, don't go to the other end of that spectrum and be like, oh, I can just wing it and see what happens. No, I mean, it is important and there's a lot of work that you have to put into it. But again, God will equip you. And it's amazing. I would encourage you to get involved in those homeschool networks and those co-ops and all that, because you'll be amazed at the homeschool community and how that community can help each other as well, because we've found a lot of resources and help just through the other families that we know that are homeschooling.
And to speak to that as a crunchy Karen would say, you got to find your tribe. Like when it comes to homeschool, you've got to have that support and that social group and that help or that co-op. Very important. Ryan, were you about to say something?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. I didn't know who. Oh,
I was just still trying to think about what a crusty mom would be. Is that like
I think that's the mom that
chain smokes.
Yeah, and yelling at her kids off the back porch to quit playing with the raccoons.
Hey, Darlene. Yeah,
it's
crusty mom.
Somebody that's got a little barbecue sauce from her lunch of Beanie Weenies. Still crusty on the side of the lip.
It's the homeschool mom that doesn't send her kids to school because she doesn't trust the establishment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
we're offending everybody today.
That's right. Let's just get them all in. The other thing I just wanted
Unless
to
that establishment's
mention,
a Whole Foods.
That's right.
Dang. Jesus, Juke. Bag of wolves.
Or Trader Joe's. Those places. The other thing I think to consider is, Jeff, you kind of hit on this a little bit, but I think like what's your commitment level as well to it? Because it does require, and that's something we learned, like, oh, this is going to take not just time, but there's energy, and we had to learn things before we could teach things. And then, getting them the places they needed to be to still be active. So you were still commuting or taking kids to school or whatever. And then even doing field trips with them and those types of things. So it is a time commitment as well. So just thinking through that, and then you want to consider what's your educational goal. Do you want them to definitely You want to make sure they are excelling in all these things. There is some benefit of those standardized tests to get them prepared to take ACT and SAT. That was tough for our kids because we hadn't really put them through that. So we had to send them to get trained on taking the test. So just things to think through. We've talked a lot about this. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Either way, did we miss something? Are we idiots? Well, we know the answer to that, but we're not.
Are you a crusty mom?
Are you a crusty mom? What is a crusty mom?
Yeah, crusty mom versus crunchy mom. Who would win an arm wrestling match?
That'd be a good debate. They both have their strengths, I think
a lot of crunchy moms probably do CrossFit though. So
that's what I'm saying. They're eating well and CrossFitting, but crusty mom, she'll take your knees out. Like
that's
she
right.
will.
She got that old lady strength.
That's right. She'll what's the girl's name that took out Kerrigan's knees? The ice skater chick. That's
Tanya Harding.
Tanya Harding. That's a crusty mom right there. You want to? She'll steal your Olympic dreams by kneecapping you. I mean,
I, Tanya, good movie.
That's right. Yes, it is good. It is good. Not as good as The Proposal, but it's up there. I don't know if that's a rom-com though. So.
By the way, to bring this full circle, Rebecca Sealfon, there she is. Her LinkedIn.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What's she doing now? Technical writer?
She is a technical writer, but she also was a software engineer for Google and actually wrote crucial components of Google Drive's system.
The smartest person alive.
So she's who I can blame when Google Drive doesn't work right?
That's right.
That's right. Well, now she doesn't work for him anymore, so you can't blame her. But she's got degrees from Princeton, her undergrad. She got a master's at Duke University in biology and a master's in computer science at Columbia. So, yeah. Nerd.
That's right. I bet she's a lot of fun at parties.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
She still looks the same, except her hair's shorter.
Yeah. I wonder if she ever gets into trivia nights with her friends, and if she knows the answer. She's like,
oh my gosh.
No, that's me.
I'm sure she's a really nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's a really nice lady. All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us for part 2 here. Man, this was a long one, but there was a lot we talked about.
I hope it didn't drag on too long.
We had to catch up.
Yeah, that's right. You can watch it in parts. All right.
Yeah, split it up.
That's right.
That's right. Take your time. Get through it.
Take multiple.
And if it did drag on too long, here's the payoff. LeBron still stinks. So there you go.
All right. We're out.
Hey, got you covered.